Discover the incredible moment a Black librarian transforms a $10,000 suit spill into a heartwarming call for unity. The room buzzed like a hive of anticipation as the annual Community Heroes Gala commenced at the local library. Evelyn, the dedicated librarian, stood with pride at the helm, her heart racing with excitement as she prepared to unveil the stories that lay in the hearts of her neighbors. This year, the spotlight would shine on the unsung heroes, those who had fought for freedom, the veterans, and the everyday warriors who face life's challenges head-on. But just as the night began to unfold, a sharply dressed corporate donor strolled in, all smiles and silk. His presence cut through the crowd like a knife, his confidence radiating wealth and privilege. In a careless moment, he knocked over a glass of rich red wine. The liquid cascaded across his pristine $10,000 suit like a crimson wave, silencing the room in a heartbeat. Tension crackled in the air. Gasps echoed as the elites recoiled, some awkwardly shielding their faces, while others nervously fumbled for napkins. Evelyn watched, her heart tightening. There it was, the divide, stark and uncomfortable, shining a light on the glaring inequality in her beloved community. While others flitted about in their attempts to salvage the situation, Evelyn felt a familiar fire ignite within her. It was a frustration born from watching her neighbors struggle day after day, their stories drowned out by the arrogance of outsiders. She took a deep breath, ready to confront the insensitivity that coursed through the room like static electricity. The crowd's unease was palpable as she stepped forward, her voice steady but infused with emotion. This evening, we gather not just to honor heroes, but to acknowledge the incredible resilience of our community, she declared, her eyes locking onto the bewildered corporate mogul. Every day, single mothers and fathers fight to keep their families afloat. They don't wear suits, but they wear the scars of their battles with pride. A ripple of murmur swept through the crowd, each word from Evelyn seeming to stitch a thread of understanding across the ballroom. She spoke of neighbors who rallied together during layoffs, extended hands when illness struck, and the quiet heroism that pulsed through her community. As she painted these vivid snapshots of solidarity and strength, something shifted. The elite began to see the tapestry of lives intricately woven around them. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from.
I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Evelyn's words hung in the air, a tangible force pulling emotions taut. She felt the room shift, raw moments awakening as faces transformed from shock to contemplation. Pride and anger danced in the atmosphere, and tears threatened to spill as the reality of privilege versus struggle bared its sharp teeth. Yet amid the awakening, an uncomfortable silence loomed, a collective awareness that the revelations were just the beginning. Would the elites dare to look beyond their gilded walls? Or would they retreat into the safety of their wealth? Evelyn stood like a beacon, heart racing, knowing they were on the precipice of change. The crowd, once split by class, now hung in uncertainty, caught between empathy for the community and the question of how far their unity could stretch without breaking. Would they step forward into the light or retreat into the shadows once more? The minutes stretched on, thick with unspoken words and shifting glances. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest, a steady reminder that the moment could turn either way. The corporate donor, still in his soaked suit, glanced around like a deer caught in headlights. He looked bewildered and slightly ashamed, a small crack forming in his polished facade. Then a voice broke the haunting silence. A woman from the back of the room, Marion, known for holding the community's spirit close. "Evelyn's right," she exclaimed, her voice quivering yet strong. "Every day I see families struggling after losing jobs. The real heroes are those who work 2 jobs just to keep food on the table." Her words felt like a spark hitting kindling. One by one, others began to echo similar sentiments. A retired veteran stood up next, his worn hands shaking as he spoke. I came home from service to face another battle, and it's my neighbors who've helped me find my way. They are the ones who deserve recognition. Encouragement circled through the room like wildfire. Stories poured out, an elderly gentleman describing how the local youth helped fix his porch, a teacher recounting the struggles of her students when the school cut programs. The collective weight of their experiences formed a newfound sense of camaraderie. And as they shared, the corporate donors shifted uncomfortably. At the same time, glimpses of understanding bloomed on the faces around him. Perhaps those who felt unyielding distance were beginning to feel electrons bridge those gaps, tinged with the light of empathy. Evelyn beamed, urgency fueling her words. What we're recognizing tonight is bigger than a single event or a spilled drink. It's about standing together and acknowledging the reality of our shared lives. This is our story, woven from struggle but colored with hope. What will you do with that knowledge? With each phrase, she urgingly beckoned the elite donors to confront their own narratives and challenges.
True unity requires effort, she declared, her voice ringing out with conviction. You have the power to help. Will you? Cheeks flushed and faces aglow, the guests began to whisper among themselves. Conversation sparked, creating an electric hum beneath the ornate chandeliers. Caution was replaced by something warmer, a willingness to connect. But just as hope surged anew, a voice cut in from the side. The corporate donor finally stepped forward, his face visibly torn. I'm sorry. I didn't see it before, and maybe I still don't fully understand, but I want to try. I want to help. His voice cracked, each word laced with an unfamiliar vulnerability. The room held its breath, a palpable mixture of disbelief and curiosity. Would this moment emerge as a turning point, or would it be washed away like the remnants of wine on his suit? Evelyn's eyes flicked between admiration and caution. You've taken the first step, stepping out of the shadows, she replied. But what comes next is where the real work begins. Just as hope began to blossom with the promise of unity, uncertainty still lingered like shadows at dusk. Would this moment of honesty usher in authentic change, or would the fear of confronting deeper truths undo the progress unfolding before them? As Evelyn awaited answers, the tension in the air grew electric once more, thick with potential. Would others step forward too, or would they retreat, leaving the brave to face the future alone? The moment hung in the air, alive and charged. Evelyn felt the energy ripple through the crowd, sensing eyes darting toward the corporate donor. To her surprise, his admission ignited something deeper among the guests. A young woman, perhaps in her late 20s, rose slowly from her seat. If he wants to help, she said, her voice mildly rebellious, why not let him start with us? We need more than money. We need people who care, who will listen. A chorus of nods followed, and whispers of agreement began to echo in the spacious hall. Evelyn felt a warm rush at the sight of collective resolution. They were here, ready to stand, ready to unleash their voices. The corporate donor paled, yet there's a glimmer in his eyes. You're right, he stammered, sensing his role shifting. It's not enough to just write a check. I want to hear what you need. I want to be part of the solution. His words stumbled, earnest yet cautious, like a toddler taking his first steps. A ripple of incredulity swept through the attendees, and Marianne stood once more, as if courage incarnate. Let's raise our challenges, one by one. We need more community programs, reliable childcare, perhaps even a space where we can come together and share our stories. The mix of voices floated in the air, solidifying resolution within the group. Evelyn watched as ideas emerged, a mentorship program for youth, affordable housing initiatives, and even a community garden for sustainable growth. Each voice contributed to a bigger picture, a patchwork of needs and ambitions. Suddenly, laughter erupted. A colorful yarn spun by an older gentleman grew legs, touching hearts. You think you're under pressure, he joked. Try rebuilding a town with just 10 hammers and a handful of nails. His humor broke through barriers, and the laughter felt like a cleansing rain, washing away layers of tension. Evelyn noticed the corporate donor smile for the first time. Maybe he was beginning to see the power of the people. But in the midst of excitement, a shadow loomed. A middle-aged man, arms crossed tightly, frowned. Talking is nice, but actions speak louder. Are you willing to commit, or gather your checkbooks again and head back to your mounting piles of cash? His challenge hung in the air, and a wave of silence drowned the laughter. Evelyn's heart raced. This was it, the tipping point. "It's easy to talk," she said, her voice steady despite the pressure. "But we are ready to partner with you. If you will put in the effort, so will we. Together we can change these stories from struggles to victories. Are you in?" The pressure mounted like a poorly balanced seesaw. Would he take the leap? Would others follow? The expectation hung like a thick fog, each person expecting an answer that could change their community. Evelyn's eyes locked onto the corporate donor. He opened and closed his mouth, a whirlwind of emotions battling behind his gaze. Finally, he nodded slowly, the weight of his decision hanging in the air. I will commit." Hope surged, the floodgates of possibility opened, yet small doubts circled in the back of Evelyn's mind. Can they truly unite? How would the community respond to the shift? She felt exhilaration mixed with uncertainty. Just then, the door creaked open, and a gust of wind rushed in, carrying the faint sound of laughter and chatter from outside. Was it a sign, or merely a distraction? That's when a voice echoed from the lobby. "Evelyn, we need you in the back." The urgency in the call pulled her focus. What could possibly be unfolding that required her attention now? Evelyn's heart skipped a beat, caught between the promise of change and the unknown calling her away. She turned back to the gathering, a somber question flickering across her heart. Was this moment just the beginning, or would it lead to unforeseen consequences that threatened the fragile bond they were building? With one final glance at the corporate turner, she instinctively knew she couldn't ignore the potential awaiting her outside. She took a breath. Time to find out what awaited her. Evelyn hurried through the crowded hall, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. What could be happening in the back that required her attention? As she pushed open the heavy door, she was met with a different scene entirely. The back room was bustling with energy, laughter spilling out like an invitation.
Several children, their faces painted with bright colors, were dancing and twirling, while volunteers set up colorful tables filled with art supplies. A makeshift stage stood at one end, where a couple of musicians were tuning their guitars. The sound of a tambourine chimed, lending an infectious rhythm to the joyful noise. "Evelyn!" A young boy dashed toward her, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Look, we're getting ready for the Arts and Crafts Fair. It's going to be amazing." Evelyn's heart flipped as she watched the kids. The unexpected shift from the heavy discussions in the main hall filled her with warmth. She had almost forgotten how community events could spark joy in every corner. "That's incredible, Danny. I didn't know this was happening today." "It was a surprise," he beamed, pulling her towards the stage. "We wanted to show everyone that we can do fun things together, too." Her heart swelled. This was it. Community at its purest. It wasn't just about the big commitments. It was about these small moments, the laughter and the creativity bubbling up from the ground. She let out a small chuckle. "You're right. This is amazing." But just as the joy began to wash over her, a familiar figure swept into the room. The corporate donor stood just beyond the doorframe, slightly hesitant, his expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The energy in the room shifted. A collective gaze turned toward him. Evelyn felt a pull in her chest, as children paused their playful chaos to gaze up at him with wide eyes. She remembered the serious conversation held moments before, the challenges they all agreed upon. Would he feel welcomed here? Would he see the heart of this community in these children's smiles? He stepped in slowly, hands shoved deep in his suit pockets, visibly uncomfortable, yet intrigued. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice puzzled yet breaking through to a melody of laughter. The artist volunteers answered him, chatter vibrating the air. A young lady in colorful overalls held up a paintbrush. "We're giving the community a chance to express themselves. We all have stories to share." Evelyn took a breath, catching his eye. She motioned for him to join them. "This is what it's about," she said, her voice steady yet animated. "Connecting, creating, and bringing joy back to this town." He hesitated a moment longer, then approached, intrigued. The children flocked around him, proudly showing their colorful drawings and painted rocks. The tension in his shoulders softened a little. Evelyn's heart raced. Could this be the step forward they needed? Just then, the unexpected happened. One of the children, a little girl with pigtails, approached the donor with a shy smile. Holding up a hand-painted card, she whispered, "Would you like to make art with us? Everyone can be a part of this." Something shifted in the air. Would he accept her invitation? Evelyn watched the moment unfold. Could this simple act of kindness open new doors? Would the corporate donor step into this space and allow the barriers of his suit to drop, just for a moment? The room held its breath, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken possibilities. She couldn't help but wonder, Could this moment of connection reshape everything they had been discussing? As the first tentative smile broke across his face, Evelyn knew the implications could be vast. She gripped the edge of a nearby table, excitement bubbling up within her. Whatever happened next, it felt monumental. And then, a sudden crash echoed in the room, breaking the silence and sending everyone's gaze to the source. What had just gone wrong? Evelyn's heart dropped as the sound resonated. It was a clatter, a loud, disorienting commotion that shattered the moment of hopeful connection. The musicians halted their tuning, paintbrushes dropped, and the laughter faded like a song cut short. In the corner, a table of bright art supplies wobbled ominously. A young girl had bumped into it, her eyes wide as she struggled to regain her balance. A cascade of paint bottles toppled over, splattering brilliant hues across the floor, reds, yellows, and blues mixing into a chaotic rainbow. And right in the line of fire stood the corporate donor, his shiny shoes now splattered and his suit a victim of an unplanned Jackson Pollock. Gasps echoed through the room. The laughter disbanded into murmurs, replaced by concern. Evelyn felt her stomach twist. How would he react? She searched his face. Would he retreat back into comfort, the polite world of suits and meetings, or could he stay grounded, willing to embrace this messy, vibrant community? The girl, still frozen in place, looked up at him with wide, fearful eyes. "I'm so sorry," she squeaked, her voice high and trembling. For a second, the room was silent. Evelyn could hear her heart pounding. She wanted to rush in and comfort the girl, to tell her it was okay, but it was also important for this moment to unravel. The donor blinked, his face a mix of surprise and confusion. The children's gazes shifted between him and the spilled paint, holding their breaths, waiting for his response. And then, something unexpected dawned on his face. A flicker of amusement broke through. "Well, I suppose this is one way to intertwine art and business," he said, his voice lightening just a little, a hint of a smile creeping into the corners of his mouth. A ripple of nervous laughter swept through the room as the tension faded slightly. Evelyn felt relief washed over her. It was almost as if the paint that splattered represented a bond. It made this moment real, a mess that mirrored the rawness of community engagement. "Let me help you clean this up," he said with newfound determination, stepping forward. "Art isn't supposed to be tidy anyway." The children blinked in surprise, some of them smiling, others uncertain, but no one moved to stop him. Instead, he reached for a brush, dipped it into a vivid blue, and began to smear it across the paint-splattered floor like a child. His corporate world seemed to fade away. He was just another participant in this joyous event. Evelyn felt her heart lift. Could this truly be a turning point? The corporate donor had just taken a dive into a world where laughter mingled with paint and connection trumped formality. Encouraged by his playfulness, more children joined, each grabbing brushes, mixing colors, and soon the floor turned into a breathtaking canvas. In that instant, something remarkable happened. The barrier between them shattered like the paint bottles had moments before. Laughter returned, bright and hopeful. Evelyn stood back, her heart soaring. This was it. This was connection. But then, just as she thought the storm of emotions had passed, a loud voice shouted from the doorway, shattering the blissful moment. "What is going on here? This is not how we run a program." Evelyn turned, her stomach sinking again. Who was it now? The voice was unmistakable, echoing authority and judgment. Would this new wave of tension roll back all their progress? Would it threaten the fragile bond they had just started to form? As she looked toward the source of the disruption, a hush fell over the room. What came next could change everything. Evelyn's gaze locked onto the imposing figure in the doorway. It was Charlie, the program supervisor, his face dark and stern, cut sharply against the lively chaos in the room. He had the authority that stifled creativity, the kind that could silence laughter with a single flash of disapproval. "Is this what we are funding?" he barked, his eyes scanning the mural of paint that now stretched across the floor. The remnants of organized activities sprawled away like forgotten dreams. A child slowly lowered his brush, and the laughter faded again, replaced by a thick blanket of apprehension. The children exchanged glances, confusion mingling with fear. Even the donor stopped mid-stroke, his brush hovering in the thick paint. Evelyn felt the weight of responsibility slam into her. She couldn't let Charlie's rigid perspective eclipse the joy that had only just begun to blossom. "Charlie," she said, stepping forward, her heart racing in her chest. "This is more than just a program. This is about community, creativity, and connection." "Connection?" Charlie scoffed, raising an eyebrow. "This looks like chaos. If someone gets hurt or if we lose funding, who's going to explain this mess?" Evelyn clenched her fists, trying to remain calm. "But look at them," she pleaded, gesturing to the kids splattering paint with reckless abandon. "They're engaged. They're creating something beautiful together." "Beautiful?" Charlie muttered, crossing his arms as if the paint were a personal affront. "Looks more like a liability to me." The donor stepped forward, still clad in paint-streaked splendor. You know, Charlie, he began, his voice steady but kind. Art isn't always neat. It's spontaneous and alive. You're missing the heart of what we're trying to do here. Evelyn's breath caught. He was defending them. Perhaps this wasn't an end, but a pivot point. She watched Charlie's tight expression soften slightly, the tension in his shoulders unwinding just a touch. "Kids," the donor called out, breaking into a grin, "what do you think we should do next?" The children straightened, hesitating, surprised by his interest. One little boy shouted, "Make it bigger!" "Exactly!" the donor said, grabbing a handful of paint and flinging it onto the floor like a bold splash of sunlight. "Let's turn this space into the best art piece ever." A wave of excitement rippled through the crowd. Evelyn could feel the energy shift, the children reinvigorated, and the whispers of doubt ebbing away. Charlie's initial reticence faded as he watched the joy on their faces. Maybe this wasn't all lost after all. With brushes and laughter echoing, everyone joined hands. Kids, the artist donor, even Charlie. It was a hodgepodge group, but something remarkable was weaving them together. As paint flew in bursts of color, Evelyn smiled to herself. Hope was returning like the morning sun breaking through clouds. She looked at Charlie, who was slowly unfolding his arms, the sternness on his face melting into something softer. But just as the room erupted into creative frenzy, the clanging of metal echoed from the front door. A security guard stepped in, eyes wide with alarm. "What's going on here?" Evelyn felt her heart lurch. This could unravel everything. Would they lose the chance for joy right when they found it? Would the shimmer of connection be snuffed out like a candle in the wind? She held her breath, waiting for the next words. Would they find a way to hold on to this moment? Or would chaos once again reign? The security guard stepped further inside, eyes darting around the room. "I need to know why there's paint everywhere," he barked, his voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. Evelyn's heart raced. She could feel the color drain from her face as she looked around. What had been a joyous explosion of creativity was now a potential disaster laying in the guard's eyes. The children froze, paintbrushes raised midair, their bright expressions morphing into worry. "Wait," the donor interjected, stepping closer to the guard. "This is a community project. It's about creativity. These kids are expressing themselves." His voice was steady but warm, as if he was wrapping each child in a protective blanket. Evelyn took a breath, gathering her courage. "We're just making art," she said, her voice steadying. "It's about bringing us together, about letting them explore their creativity. This is exactly what we hope to achieve." The guard's brow furrowed, but just as Evelyn feared he would insist on cleaning up the mess, Charlie stepped forward. She could hardly believe it. "Let's not be hasty," he said, surprising everyone in the room. "Art is about risk and growth. Sometimes you have to get a little messy to create something special." Everyone held their breath. Evelyn's hope flickered back to life. Could this be the turning point she'd longed for? As the guard's gaze shifted from Charlie to the vibrant chaos around him, he began to soften. The colors swirling on the floor were unlike anything he'd seen, filled with raw emotion. Slowly, his posture relaxed. "All right, but I'm going to need to see some safety measures here," he said, still cautious but no longer as intimidating. "Of course," the donor exclaimed, his enthusiasm infectious. "We are all about safety. Kids, make sure you're wearing your smocks." The children, now reinvigorated, jumped back into action, splashing paint and laughing as if the earlier tension had never existed. Evelyn could hardly contain her joy as she watched Charlie smile faintly at the children's energy. It was as if a wall had crumbled, allowing a flood of possibilities to rush in. "In fact," Charlie continued, glancing at the donor, "we should take more risks. Let's encourage them to not just paint, but to express how they feel." "Exactly," Evelyn called out, her heart swelling. "Let's dive deeper into each child's story, their creativity. Let's arm them with the tools they need to communicate themselves." The donor nodded enthusiastically, rallying the kids once again. "Who wants to create a mural about their dreams?" Hands shot up, voices yelled out, and laughter again filled the room. As the painting continued, Charlie stepped back, watching the bewildering mix of joy and chaos unfold. However, just as Evelyn felt everything settling back into harmony, the front door creaked open again. A figure in a sharp suit entered, now an uninvited guest, in a room overflowing with heart. He looked around, confusion and disapproval evident in his expression. Evelyn's stomach dropped. What would happen now? Would this stranger see the beauty or condemn them to silence once more? Her hands trembled, and 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. She had fought for this moment, but could it survive another challenge? As the crowd continued to rejoice in color, Evelyn's eyes darted towards the newcomer, who approached with an unreadable expression. Would he be another obstacle, or would he see the truth that lay beneath the paint? The very truth would change everything. The man in the suit moved through the room with an air of authority. His polished shoes squeaked slightly on the paint-drenched floor as he glanced at the kids, still lost in their creative frenzy. He looked at the guard, then back at the colorful chaos. His brows furrowed deeper with each passing second. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice cutting through the joyous noise. A chill rushed through Evelyn, and she felt the weight of every eye in the room shift towards this new threat.
Evelyn stepped forward, mustering all the courage she had left. "We're creating a mural," she explained, gesturing at the kids with paint-streaked faces and clothes. "It's a celebration of their dreams and their stories." The man's eyes narrowed, skepticism bubbling beneath the surface. "And what kind of dreams require this mess?" A few of the children's smiles faltered, and Evelyn's heart sank. They had fought for this moment, for the chance to express themselves, and here it was being questioned again. Before she could respond, Charlie interjected. Taking a deep breath, he stepped in front of the man, crossing his arms defiantly. "What you see as a mess, sir, is their freedom. Every splash holds a story. Every color represents their voice." The tension in the air shifted slightly, but the man remained unyielding. "And what about the property damage? That's not art, that's vandalism." Evelyn felt a surge of anger rising in her chest. This isn't vandalism. It's a place for the kids to feel seen and heard. It's a space for community and collaboration. They are reclaiming their right to express who they are, and that's valuable. For a moment, the man seemed taken aback, and Evelyn could see a flicker of something in his eyes, curiosity mingled with discomfort. The children resumed their work, throwing glances at him, and she sensed they were nervously hoping for approval. "Art has always come from passion," Charlie continued, his words igniting the air around them. "And it isn't clean, it's raw, it's messy. But that's life. You can't box in these kids' brilliance just because you can't understand it." The argument hung in the air, heavy but electrifying. Evelyn could feel the children start to rally around Charlie's words. They began to splatter paint with renewed vigor, laughter cascading as they let go of their anxieties. The man crossed his arms, torn between his rigid views of structure and the undeniable beauty of what was unfolding before him. Evelyn took a small step closer, emboldened by Charlie's courage. No longer would she let the spirit of creativity be snuffed out by fear. "Let's take a moment to reconsider," she said softly, her voice even despite her racing heart. "Why not join us? We can show you what this really means. Forget the suit, just for a bit. Be a kid." The man hesitated, looking down at his pristine suit, and then back at the children who were practically buzzing with excitement. The way they moved with pure joy, completely engrossed in their creative energy, tugged at something deep within him. Would he step into the chaos, into their world, or continue to stand aloof in disapproval? Evelyn held her breath, waiting for an answer that could change everything. All eyes turned to him, as the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the impossible moment when he might just pick up a paintbrush. Would he choose to become one with their dreams, or retreat back into his structured life?
The man's gaze flickered, a storm brewing behind his polished demeanor. Evelyn could see the struggle, a battle between the rigidity of his world and the colorful liberation unfolding before him. For just a beat, time slowed, filled with anticipation and hope. "Join us?" he echoed, his voice softer now. It almost sounded like he was trying to convince himself. "Yes," Charlie replied, stepping forward, paintbrush poised like a wand. "Just a small moment. We promise it'll be fun." The man looked to the children again, their eyes wide with excitement, paint palettes at the ready. Each one was waiting for some sign, a signal that it was okay to dream a little bigger. There was something unguarded about their smiles, something that tugged at his carefully crafted facade. With a deep breath, he unclenched his fist. The sound of his suit fabric rustling felt unusually loud in the vibrant atmosphere as he slowly reached toward a brush lying on the edge of a table. The children gasped collectively, the air thick with shared exhilaration. "Are you really going to?" whispered one wide-eyed girl, paint-speckled fingers poised as she leaned closer. "Let's see what you've got," the man said, attempting a tentative smile that somehow felt foreign to his face. He dipped the brush into a deep blue paint, looking at it as if it were a portal into an uncharted realm. "Now remember, it's all about how you feel," Charlie encouraged. "Just go with your instincts." As the man pressed the brush to the wall, the blue streak transformed into a sweeping wave. There was something freeing about it, almost like the start of a long-forgotten dream surfacing from the depths of his mind. The initial hesitation melted away with each stroke, revealing not just a mural, but a part of his own story he had buried under layers of expectation. Evelyn watched in awe. Here was this man, a stranger just moments ago, diving into a world he had only looked upon from the outside. Each splash of paint began to blend with the children's earlier chaos, the colors weaving together in a tapestry of wild imagination. "See?" a young boy laughed, throwing more colors onto the wall. "You're a natural." At the laughter of the children, the man's tight expression softened. He began to smile genuinely, the corners of his mouth rising with warmth that spread in the room. "This is liberating," he admitted, a lightness creeping into his voice. Evelyn felt a swell of joy rise within her. Maybe, just maybe, they could break down the barriers built around him. If he could loosen up, perhaps others could too. As the mural blossomed with life, new colors layered over the old, Evelyn caught sight of the guard in the corner. He watched with a knowing nod, reluctant approval painted on his stone face. Suddenly, the room crackled with laughter, excitement, and a sense of belonging that had been missing. The man snatched up more colors, practically beaming as he joined in the frenzy. Evelyn's heart sang. They were becoming more than just artists on a wall. They were a team, blending their stories with each stroke. But then, just as they reached the peak of their collective joy, an unexpected sound pulled them back to reality. A heavy thud echoed behind them, followed by a series of hurried footsteps. The guard's neutral expression shifted to alarm. "What's happening?" whispered Evelyn, her heart racing again as she glanced towards the doorway. Before anyone could answer, a familiar suit, this one darker and more formal, appeared in view. The room tensed, an unsettling feeling hanging in the air. Would this new figure threaten the fragile unity they'd just begun to build? Evelyn took a step forward, her resolve hardening. They couldn't let this moment slip away. Not now. "Stand strong," she whispered to the kids, ready to fight for what they'd created, hoping this would be a time when their voices could not just be heard, but celebrated. What would happen next? Who was this new person, and would they be an ally or an adversary in their quest for creative liberation? The new figure stepped through the doorway, his presence emanating authority that smothered the atmosphere. He was an attorney for the corporate donor, a man used to maintaining control, often at the expense of vulnerability. The moment he spotted the chaos, his brow furrowed, eyes darting to the paint-splattered floor and the laughing children. "What is the meaning of this?" he barked, directing his gaze at the corporate donor, who hesitated mid-stroke, paintbrush hovering above the mural. "You can't just throw money at a problem and expect chaos to solve it." Evelyn felt her heart race. This man was a storm cloud threatening to rain on the progress they had made, but she couldn't let fear back her down. "This isn't chaos," she asserted, stepping forward. "This is creativity. This is a community reclaiming its voice and telling its story." The attorney's gaze shifted to her, skepticism etched on his features. "And this?" He gestured to the paint and mess surrounding them. "This is a liability waiting to happen. You're risking everything here with this nonsense." Evelyn's spirit surged, fueled by the laughter and joy swirling around her. "It's only a liability if you refuse to see the value in what's happening here," she countered. "These children are learning, growing, and connecting, things that can't be measured in money." Behind her, the children, emboldened by her words, began to shout out their dreams and aspirations, adding their voices to the chorus of lively chatter. The walls reverberated with the feisty energy of youth as they pointed at their mural, a vibrant blend of colors and stories reflecting their hopes. The attorney's expression hardened further, looking over the children as if they were a wild pack he had no way of taming. Evelyn caught the hesitant gaze of the corporate donor and felt a flicker of fear that the moment was slipping. "Don't let him take this from us," she said softly, pleading with her eyes for him to stand alongside them. He drew a breath, absorbing the chaos before him, the laughter that echoed like a promise. "Actually," he started, his voice unsteady but shifting, "this mess is, well, it's kind of beautiful." Evelyn could hardly believe her ears. "What do you mean?" He blinked, gathering his thoughts amid the whirlwind. "I mean, I came here thinking I knew what this community needed, but watching them, seeing their joy in creating, it's a lesson for me too. I think we can do something together." Evelyn held her breath. Could this be the breakthrough they needed? The attorney's eyebrows shot up. "You've got to be kidding," he scoffed. "You're going to let this—" "Yes," the corporate donor interjected firmly, cutting him off. "This is about more than profit margins. It's about people. I want to listen, learn, and create something that matters." Evelyn felt the air shift, a ripple of possibility coursing through the room. Maybe, just maybe, this was a crucial moment after all. The barriers were starting to dissolve, revealing a path forward. The laughter of the children joined the insistence of their colorful mural, urging the attorney to reconsider his rigid stance. It was as if the room was suddenly bathed in sunlight, illuminating what had been hidden in the shadows of conformity. "Look," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the rush of her heartbeat. "Art is messy. Life is messy. We cannot pretend that these kids' dreams are tidy little packages. They're complex, just like all of us." The attorney faltered, the sarcasm fading from his tone. He glanced around at the colorful chaos, the children beaming with pride at their work. "That's a good point." He rubbed his temples, a slight shift in his demeanor. "But can we turn this into something productive without losing the heart of it?" Evelyn smiled. "Of course. We can host workshops, create events, partner with local businesses, and support these kids in crafting their future." A flicker of excitement spread through the crowd, and the air pulsed with potential. "Even launch a scholarship program," the corporate donor added, his eyes lighting up. "Let's empower these kids to follow their dreams." "Can you both imagine the ripple effect?" Evelyn urged. "If we invest in their passions now, they can shape not just their futures, but the future of this town." The attorney's expression softened further, the weight of authority no longer so heavy. As he looked back at the children, color splashed across their grinning faces. His guard began to lower. "Okay," he relented, the first hint of a smile breaking through. "Let's find a balance. Safety is still paramount, but not at the cost of creativity. I'll support this, but we need to work as a team." Cheers erupted, igniting the room with excitement. The children jumped up, bouncing with joy, while Evelyn felt a wave of relief washing over her. They had crossed the threshold. In that moment, she realized they weren't just artists creating a mural. They were builders, stitching together hope and unity. They were transforming the landscape of their community, redefining what it meant to dream, empower, and create. She glanced around the room, sparkling with anticipation and energy, a kaleidoscope of endless possibilities. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, painting their futures with every color they could muster. "Now," Evelyn said, gripping the edge of the table as she felt the potential vibrate beneath her fingertips, "let's actually finish this mural. Does it represent dreams or what?" The room erupted, laughter and joy cascading like an unstoppable wave, carrying their momentum forward. "Together," the children shouted, and just like that, they dove back into pure creation, alive with hope and determination. Now was the moment. It was time to use their voices, their stories, and each splattered stroke, weaving lives together in colorful unity. And just like that, if you've been moved by this incredible journey, make sure you subscribe immediately to the channel. You need to subscribe now and not miss a single story of heart and transformation. Also, don't forget to leave a like now to feed the algorithm, helping us reach more supporters. I want you to comment your thoughts and feelings about this powerful ending. Did it inspire you? And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this journey from division to unity. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans like you understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.